Alright, so we're talking Warlock builds in today's video. So these are 3 Warlock builds that I would highly recommend. One's more focused towards like a team play GM strat. One is a general play build that you can use pretty much everywhere, and then one that I'm hovering over with Speaker's Sight is more of like a healing. You can use this in GMs, you could use this in raids. It's really just used for healing your teammates. It's got pretty wide usage in any team variety. So starting off with the main Warlock build that I've been using since day 1 came around, this is the drip. I'll show my drip just at the end of each build. So it's the Call with Subsistence Desperate Measures, Summoner with Heal Clip, or you could also use No Hesitation with Enhanced Psychic. And Xenophage, you can obviously swap Xenophage out for Commemoration or anything like that. The weapons don't really matter. If I hover over this build here, you can see I have a different loadout. It focuses around using Divinity and Commemoration. If we're doing Tormentor content, as Div is just really good for those Tormentors. And you can see on the boots, they have Void Scavengers and Void Holsters, and for Xenophage, they have Solar Holsters and Solar Scavengers. But that's not what matters. What matters is the build mods and the super and the abilities and such. So, Song of Flame we'll be using as our super. The super is very lax. You can pretty much use whatever super you want, really. But I would recommend Song of Flame, as it's really good for ignitions and just spreading Scorch. But Nova Bomb also comes really highly recommended if you're doing single target burst DPS. Song of Flame's really good for large amounts of mini bosses and just spreading that around, doing a lot of damage and killing a lot of targets. Moving on to abilities, I personally use Phoenix Dive, but Healing Rift also extremely well. If you've got the new exotic Bond that has Secant Filaments on it, you could use the Empowering Rift and get Devour, but you don't need to, as the Aspect Feed the Void will give you Devour. But Arcane Needle has the melee, giving you 3 melees with Arcane Needle. This will help provide a Darkness debuff, as well as giving you that Darkness Prismatic much faster. We're going to be using a Storm Grenade, and we'll get into more of this later, but just know that Storm Grenade right now is insane, with the 2 aspects, Feed the Void and Bleak Watcher. For fragments, we're going to be using Facet of Hope, Facet of Command, as Facet of Hope will give you your abilities back when you have any sort of elemental buff. This includes Devour, which you'll have from Feed the Void. Facet of Command, which says freezing a target reloads your equipped weapons. This is really good as we're running Bleak Watcher turrets, and every time this turret will freeze, it will reload a weapon. So if you're using a heavy weapon, say Xenophage, and you're shooting and the target gets frozen, your Xenophage will just automatically reload. No reason to like holster it to let that automatic reload play out, or actually go through the really slow reload yourself. We're going to be using Facet of Protection, which is when you're surrounded, you take less damage, and for a lot of content this is extremely good. The new dual Destiny mission is also extremely good with this because there's just so many ads. In some content it's not needed, you could swap it out for something else, like maybe you want Facet of Grace if you're using a kinetic weapon. Moving on though, we have Facet of Courage, which says your Arc, Solar and Void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with Darkness debuffs, and Darkness debuffs includes Unravel. As you can see on the left, it says Darkness debuffs include Slow, Freeze, Sever, Suspend and Unravel. You can apply Slow and Freeze with Bleak Watcher turrets, and you can apply Unravel with Arcane Needles. So this is pretty much permanent uptime as long as you put a Darkness ability and then your grenade, you'll be fine. This is really good. And Facet of Balance, just to round it all up, rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants your melee energy, and darkness damage grants grenade energy. That's why in the build we have a darkness weapon and a light weapon to give you just a maximum ability uptime. And that's it for the subclass. Moving on to the build. The main exotic of choice is Getaway Artists. Now this means when you consume your Arc Grenade, it will give you amplified, and it will also give you a better Arc Soul than the Arc subclass one. So this is why we need Storm Grenade, as Storm Grenade and Getaway Artist will pair really nicely, and your Arc Soul kills count as ability kills, and they will give you Devour as well. Now, as for mods on your armor pieces, if I just pull up this screen on the sidebar to show you all the mods, these are all the mods and the artifact perks that I'm running. However, the mods aren't giantly necessary. I think the only one you really need is the Strand Siphon, or whatever siphon matching a weapon. So I use a Solar Siphon for Xenophage kills and a Strand Siphon for Strand kills. I don't really have anything in this build, however, that uses orbs to do anything, so I'm just getting free armor charges for nothing, except from Special Finisher, which means if I have 3 stacks of armor charge, I can get a Finisher and then spawn Special, which is really good if you run out of Call ammo. On the Bond, I have 2 Bolstering Detonations and a Solar Dexterity mod. The Solar Dexterity is purely for the handling of Xenophage. Xenophage handles quite poorly, it's very slow, so being able to boost that's quite nice. And getting your class ability back when you deal damage with a grenade, this is really good because your Bleak Watcher turret damage counts as grenade damage. Moving down to the chest piece, I have 1 Solar Reserve as Xenophage only works with 1 Solar Reserve, and then I have 2 Solar Resistance, 1 Solar Resistant and a Harmonic, but they're both Solar because I'm running Song of Flame. Now, I would change these resistance depending on what activities you're doing, what enemies you're going to be encountering. My boots are completely tailored to the user's Xenophage, so a Scavenger so I can pick up more Xenophage ammo, and 2 holsters so that if I don't want to reload Xenophage I can just holster it away. Say I don't have my grenade, I can't get any freezes to reload my grenade, reload my Xenophage with my grenade, then I can just holster it and these 2 solar holsters will reload my Xenophage, and you will hear audible clicks when that happens. In the background the D1 Taken King OST is playing, which is really nice. And then on the Bond, we have Powerful Attraction to use your class ability and pick up all those orbs around you. Special Finisher to use your armor charges, and then Time Dilation. This Time Dilation really not needed. I just don't know what to put in the slot. Proximity Ward is a really good mod to use, as when you do a finisher, you get an overshield of I think 100 HP, maybe 150, and this will just protect you while in finisher, so you don't die any weird deaths. And that's the first build with Getaway Artists. So, just as a quick overview of it all, I will show everything on screen one last time. And just pause if you need to. These are the weapons. And moving on to the next build, we have a Cenotaph Mask build. So Cenotaph recently got nerfed, but it's still extremely viable for GM content and just spamming rockets. Cenotaph's really good for like Nightfall clears, GM clears, raid clears, when your ad clear is just rockets, you're just going to spam rockets everywhere. I'm running a Prismatic Warlock again with Devour and a Bleak Watcher turret, but this time I don't have Getaway Artists, I have Cenotaph, which is why Storm Grenades, I'm just using them. It doesn't really matter what grenade you use, but Storm Grenades have one of the better cooldown timers, except from Healing Grenades. I would actually say Healing Grenades could be better, as you can either use the Healing Grenade or consume it into a Bleak Watcher turret. Again, I run Phoenix Dive, just a matter of preference, keeping the Arcane Needles around, and then for fragments we have Hope, Command, Protection, Courage, and Balance. These are the same 5 that I was using previously. I would not recommend Facet of Dawn, as Radiant only lasts for 5 seconds, you can't extend it, and it's not really worth it. However, you can proc it 3 times with Arcane Needle, so if you think you're able to proc Radiant, maybe you want to deal with a barrier champion, just hit a melee, you have Radiant for 5 seconds, you can nuke, and hopefully you get the stun. As for weapons, we're running a Petance, which is the Strand. It is the Stasis Trace Rifle from last season, Season 23, or Season of the Wish. I'm running a Demolitionist Wellspring roll on it, which, when I use my grenade, it reloads the gun, and when I get kills with it, I'm getting ability energy back with Wellspring and Demolitionist. I'm getting a lot of grenade energy back if I decide to use that. I'm using an Indebted Kindness with Lead from Gold Volt Shot, as this is just really good. I'm getting a lot of ammo from Lead from Gold, and Volt Shot's really good for applying Jolt, so it's good for stunning overloads. and also just really good for ad clear as it is a rocket assisted sidearm. We're running Galahorn as our exotic. However, this could change. This entire build could change depending on what your team comp is. So if someone else is running Galahorn in your team, you don't really want to run it. You can switch to a Reconstruction Bipod Apex for the same effect. If you were gonna switch to a Reconstruction Bipod Apex, your exotic slot opens up. So maybe you want to run a secondary trace instead, maybe Path of Least Resistance that has shoot to loot, and as it has shoot to loot, you might be able to run something like Kvoshtov, which also has shoot to loot. Kvostov's been doing extremely well recently in the kinetic primary ad clear slot. If you were gonna run Kvoshtov, I would switch Facet of Balance out for, where is it? It is Facet of Grace, as this will give you bonus transcendent energy when getting kills with kinetic weapons, and that is basically what Kvoshtov does, just insanely well. As for armor, I will pull up the same screen as before to talk about things. So obviously, Cenotaph Mask, running double solar siphons for the Galahorn orbs. So the when the Galahorn gets a kill, you'll get an orb. And I'm pairing this with a heavy ammo finder. Obviously, when you're on Cenotaph, you don't get the bricks, so you need to be trying to find as much heavy as you possibly can. This is good for teams if you can get your teammates to run one finder and a scout mods, so you just have a lot of heavy so the Cenotaph user doesn't run out. On my arms, I'm using 2 solar loaders just to help the reload of Galahorn, just to make that go faster so I can get more rockets out. Galahorn does work with triple reserves, so on the chest piece you could run triple reserve galley. However, it does require 9 energy to do that, or if you're running Song of Flame, you can use harmonics and you can use 6 energy to do that. However, I quite like having a just a resistance mod slot open and available, just so I can take like 5% less damage against enemies. Is quite good, especially in GMs. That 1 or 2 extra shots that it saves you from could be the difference between wasting a res and just wiping. Moving down to the boots, this is where I use a recuperation mod. So those orbs I'm generating with Galahorn kills, I'm then getting recuperation stacks so I can heal myself when I pick up an orb. It's just like those clutch moments when you need that little bit of health, you can profit off. 1 solar surge, now you could really like switch recuperation for a 2nd solar surge if you're going for like a quick GM where you need the extra damage for a boss, thinking any high damage, high health bar bosses. There aren't many in GMs that you can't just nuke out, but if you're not running a Well of Radiance and you're running Prismatic Warlock, then maybe you want double solar surges. And obviously a solar scavenger. Obviously your teammates as well should be running solar scavengers, because if they're just, you get 2 rockets instead of 1 when you have a matching scav on Apex. So you're just getting an extra rocket. It's just a waste if you're not running that. And then for the bond, powerful attraction, special finisher, and time dilation. Time dilation, again, not needed. You can very much switch time dilation out for proximity ward, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to overwrite this loadout and call that a day. Again, special finisher, so I can stack the armor charges, not so I can use them. It's just so I can stack them, so that I can keep picking up orbs for recuperation, and powerful attraction just to make sure I can pick up all the orbs. In a GM setting, I may recommend a healing rift, as it provides more health over time, whereas a Phoenix Dive is just a one-off heal. So if you need continuous health over time, a healing rift may be better. But I will pull up the screen one last time, just so I can show you all the mods. Pause it if you need it. Alright, and moving into the final build, which I think is just a game changer, is this Speaker's Sight build, which says healing grenades spawn a restoration turret, and then all this means is you throw your healing grenade at the floor and it will spawn a turret, and that will just seek nearby allies and heal them with restoration. It's just really good. You don't need to run this on Prismatic Warlock. You can run this on just Well of Radiance with a healing grenade. Something to note, if you are running a healing grenade with Touch of Flame on Solar instead of Prismatic, the healing turret will give restoration times 2 to your allies instead of restoration times 1. So if you are running a Solar Warlock instead of a Prismatic Warlock for the Well of Radiance, as well is still really good for that damage buff, then maybe think about running Speaker Sight with a Healing Nade and Resto times 2 with Touch of Flame, and that'll just help your allies immensely. However, this build is all about Prismatic because we have Kvoshtov on, and as I mentioned, Kvoshtov is kinda good. So again, we have the Healing Rift, we have whatever jump you like. You could use Blink if you're a Blink kind of person. Arcane Needles, Healing Grenade, obviously, Feed the Void, but this time I'm featuring Hellion instead of Stasis Turrets. Now, there's no reason to use Stasis Turrets on this build, because Stasis Turrets require you to consume your grenade to throw down the Stasis Turret, and you're not consuming your Healing Grenade, you're just throwing it down. Therefore, it's kind of a waste to run Bleak Watcher, and you may as well just run Hellion, which means you're going to get a Solar Body that's going to give Scorch to enemies. It, it's just going to do a little bit of extra damage. It's going to be helpful in some situations. Fragment wise, we're talking Facet of Hope, Facet of Justice, and this means while Transcendent, your grenade and ability final blows will explode, helping this ad clear. You could go for Command, however, I don't think Command is very good in this instance because you're not freezing anything or suppressing anything. Facet of Protection, when you're surrounded, DR. Facet of Courage, as before, and Facet of Grace. The only note about Facet of Command is that when you go Transcendent, your on Warlock, your nade will freeze and suppress targets. So if you're Prismatic, and this might help you refund your magazine. However, this build really relying around Kvoshtov, you can reload Kvoshtov yourself. It's not that big a deal. I'm running Kvoshtov with Indebted Kindness and an Apex Predator. This could be swapped out for Commemoration, Eagle Edge Sword, Cataphract, whatever you really need. If you're in a damage rotation in a boss, maybe you want Cataphract for the bump in damage. That is really just dependent on whatever you're doing. Looking at the mods, we have an issue that I'm on time dilation once again when I don't need to be. So we're just gonna switch that out, and in general, there we go, 100 resilience. So pulling up the mod page. So we can see on the helmet we're running 2 kinetic siphons, which means after every 2 kills with Kvoshtov, you're going to spawn an orb. You can then shoot to loot that orb with Kvoshtov, and you're going to get that times 7 Eyes Up Guardian stack, which means your ricochet rounds with Kvoshtov are just going to do immensely more damage, pairing that with a heavy ammo finder, just because Kvoshtov is an exotic primary, so the kills with that are going to greatly progress your finder. You're going to get a lot of heavy breaks on the floor. I'm running 2 kinetic loaders just to speed up the Kvoshtov reload. You could very much use dexterity mods or loader mods or fastball, whatever you really feel like. On the chest piece, I'm running 2 solar reserves for the extra rockets. No biggie, just extra rockets. On the legs, sorry, I'm using 2 stacks of recuperation for the healing and a stack of solar scavenger. If you're using a reconstruction bipod apex, it might be worth running 1 solar surge, as bipod reduces your damage by 25%. So being able to offset that damage by running 1 solar surge, so you're offsetting it by only 10% instead, is much better. And then obviously on the bond, the same one we have been seeing: powerful attraction for orbs, special finisher, proximity ward. Obviously the stat mods dependent on what your armor is. My armor is all very scattered. I have a lot of wasted stats around the place. All of this is discipline that I have on the armor. I can't take that off. I have 108 plus 10 from Prismatic Warlock. So those are 3 builds that I would say are key to playing Warlock very successfully in the final shape. So to recap, we're talking Getaway Artists for just general content, running around the Pale Heart, doing your Pathfinders, all that kind of stuff. Cenotaph is a very niche and specific build, and Speaker Sight is a very team-based, helpful build in any team activities. And thank you guys for watching this video. I hope it's helped. Like and subscribe, and peace.